Clearly, we are living in a time of multiple crises, and it has to create new incentives to cooperate and perhaps try to invent new forms of cooperation as well. I would like first to try to explain a very important concept to me, starting this discussion, which is the fact that we have to be very careful on double standards for our action. Second, I will try to revert on the common interest in strategic autonomy we have between Europe and Asia, and I will try to share some key pillars of this new partnership between Europe and Asia. But first, allow me to start with the importance of not to accept, I would say, the double standard in the current environment. Indeed, we live in this world of multi-crisis, and the big risk is just to look at the crisis at our border and to forget our principles and to forget the fact that all these crises and these wars are interconnected. And I say that in a country, I have to say, and I want to commend you, Lawrence, and your predecessor, where, for instance, the Ukrainian war was never perceived as a European war. But from the very beginning, you took your responsibility and you were very vocal. But let's be clear, we have several risks of double standards in our current environment. Double standards in Ukraine, for a lot of countries, in Latin, Africa, Asia, here. I hear the narrative, and most of the time what is shared is a sort of equidistance between Ukraine and Russia, and the fact that this is a European conflict, and that we are clearly spending too much energy, too much time, and creating too much pain for the rest of the world with what's happening in Ukraine. Allow me to say this is a total mistake. Because if we consider that Russia could be allowed to take a part of the territory of Ukraine without any restriction, without any constraint, without any reaction of the global order, how would you phrase what could happen in Taiwan? What will you do the day something happened in Philippines? There is no several global order by definition. If we stick to our principles, this is true in Europe and this is true elsewhere. So what is at stake in Ukraine is our common credibility to be sure that we are still able to preserve territorial integrity and sovereignty of people. No double standard. At the same time, I hear the voice in this region, as well in Africa, in Latin, the Gulf, about the double standard in Gaza, where a lot of things that the Americans and the Europeans are in fact giving a free pass to Israel. And this is a big risk. This is why we did condemn the terrorist attack from the Hamas. We work very hard with some key partners, and I want to thank them here, to release the hostages. This is the very last one. We do support all the initiatives taken for a ceasefire, and I do thank the efforts made by the United States of America, Egypt, Jordan, Qatar in that direction. But we do believe that we need a ceasefire. The emergency is for a humanitarian answer, and we do have to work very hard for recognition of a Palestinian state and a mutual recognition in order to create a strong architecture of security in the region. And I can revert, if you want, into Q&A on this aspect. But this is the only way not to leave the floor to those saying, you live with double standards. If we abandon Gaza, if we consider there is a free pass for Israel, even if we do condemn the terrorist attacks, we kill our own credibility in the rest of the world. And this is why we do reject double standard, and this is why I think it's very important in our current environment to be consistent and to follow our principles, our rules, and to consider that what is at stake is clearly the global order, and what is at stake is our credibility to protect this global order. Having said that, I think a risk of double standards is as well to abandon totally our agenda of sustainability and health. And it could surprise a lot of people when I say that in front of a lot of defense ministers and so on, but everything is intercorrelated. And by the way, we experienced quite recently the fact that the pandemic could have some security impact and change a little bit the course of the world. But this is a double standard. If we, as rich country, we stop investing in sustainability, meaning climate and biodiversity and health, because this is the new nexus, because it could create new crises and new security crises, and because this is a killer for our credibility vis-à-vis the South. This is the best way to open the door for a big divide of this world. So this is why, having said that, I do consider that rejecting double standards in all these affairs do not imply balancing everything, but very clearly requires us to be very consistent in this approach. And I insist on that because I do believe that the main risk today is a risk of division of the world, and a division between the two superpowers. And the instruction given to all the others, you have to choose your side. If we do so, we will kill the global order, and we will destroy, methodically, all the institutions we created after the Second World War in order to preserve peace and to have cooperation on health, on climate, on human rights, and so on. But we need them, probably much more than before. This is why I believe our key challenge is how to preserve peace and stability and prosperity in this current environment. And in a moment when the competition between China and the United States for global leadership could create constraints and a side effect for each of us, without us willing or even able to imagine handing our interests over to one or the other, how to react. And I will be clear. France is a friend and an ally of the United States, and is a friend, and we do cooperate, even if sometimes we disagree and compete with China. I do intend to remain so, loyally, with a demanding approach of our own interests. But France is no less attached to what is essential for herself: strategic autonomy, freedom of sovereignty. And we do defend this approach for Europe and for Indo-Pacific, which means we want to cooperate, but we don't want to depend. We want to cooperate, but we don't want to be instructed on a daily basis what is allowed, what is not allowed, and how our life will change because of the decision of a single person.